Don't forget me.
Don't worry, Homer. You'll always be a part of me.
Don't!
Mona Simpson. We love her, but we do hate to see her leave. So today I'll be running through the complete timeline of Homer Simpson's sometimes flighty mother, who went from a repressed and lonely wife of Abe to a fully liberated flower power mama. Now, it is very rare that we can definitely say a timeline is complete on this channel, so this was a truly interesting one to research and examine, not only for her development, but also how she was used in the show. So without further ado, let's get started. Later on in the series, when Mona is forced to go on the run, she'd smuggle secret messages to her son. Now, if she was around today, she would have certainly benefited from CyberGhost VPN to hide her location and avoid surveillance. And yes, that is my seamless transition to this video's sponsor, CyberGhost VPN. Basically, it protects your internet activity through a virtual private network. Your IP address is hidden and your data is encrypted, helping to shield you from snoopers and thieves. It's the protector of over 38 million users worldwide, and it's one of the most recommended VPNs on Trustpilot. It's also perfect for unlocking content too. Last week I really wanted to watch Death Note to catch all of the references in the latest Treehouse of Horror parody, but annoyingly it wasn't available on my UK Netflix. But luckily I had CyberGhost VPN to let me switch over to the Japanese server, and up it came. Also, just one subscription can protect up to 7 devices all at the same time. By using the link in the description, you can enjoy an 83% discount on CyberGhost VPN. That's just £1.70 a month and 4 months for free. Plus, they have a 45-day money-back guarantee and 24/7 support, so it's totally risk-free too. Her early life and meeting Abe. When Abe Simpson worked in the US Air Force keeping turtles off the runway, he frequently visited a bar where Mona worked as a waitress, and in a desperate bid to impress her, he stole a plane and impressively broke the sound barrier, but he did also break the plane too. But luckily for Abe, Mona is a sucker for reckless nitwits, and she accepts his marriage proposal, although red flags were starting to show, as she admitted she was already getting sick of him.
Seriously, I'm already tired of your voice.
Not the best way to start a marriage. While courting Mona, Abe was a very naughty boy and conceived a child with a carnival worker. But she forgave him for his wandering eye, possibly because she was no saint herself. And it wasn't until many years later that the Simpsons family learned that Mona had an affair with a lifeguard called Mason Fairbanks, who incorrectly believed that he was Homer's biological father. A year after the birth of Abe's illicit child, he married Mona, and soon enough, baby Homer entered the world. And although Mona did hope that Homer would have a positive role model growing up, Abe was far from an ideal husband or father. Instead, it was left to Mona to provide Homer with the encouragement sorely lacking from his father.
Maybe our Homer could grow up to be president someday.
The trio lived together on Amos Pearson's moose farm until Homer spooked the cows into producing sour milk. Therefore, the bank foreclosed on the property in 1963. And so the little family moved to Springfield, but it didn't heal Mona and Abe's marriage at all. It just proved how different they were. She wanted to integrate more within the community by taking night classes, but Abe just didn't. To my understanding, I believe that Abe had already lived such an interesting life, which you can learn more about in my video about him, whereas from what we see by Mona, she lived in a small town, became a cocktail waitress, and then became a mother. Homer and Abe would return to the ranch later on, but their touching trip down memory lane turned as sour as the milk when Abe revealed that Homer was just an accident.
You were an accident!
This accidental pregnancy was undoubtedly one reason why Mona decided to marry Abe, and could explain his disinterest in his young son, which at times certainly comes across as resentment.
Quit your daydreaming, melonhead! Quit your daydreaming, melonhead!
Homer's childhood as a whole just seemed like one long torment, often overhearing his parents argue, and their disputes got so bad that Mona also exposed how she married Abe just to spite her mother. This is why Homer loves fireworks, as it's the only time where he couldn't hear his parents bicker. Mona the Radical. The swinging 60s changed everything for Mona. One look at the long flowing locks of footballer Joe Namath awakened a fiery rebellious passion inside the homemaker's heart. Therefore, casting off the shackles of repression with a beer-swilling Abe, Mona embraced a hippie lifestyle and made friends who shared her counter-cultural interests. So much in fact that she became pretty intimate with some, especially with fellow hippies Seth and Munchie. This is all while her husband stayed at home completely oblivious.
And a demon in the sack.
As Mona rose through the ranks of flower power to eco-warrior, she spent far less time at home with her son as she partook in political rallies. And so, lacking attention from both parents, Homer soon developed an eating disorder. And while Mona and Abe struggled to mend their relationship at marriage counseling, Homer was left to eat away his sadness with chili dogs. The more time Mona spent out of the house, the more time Homer comforted himself with the tempting glow of a fully stocked fridge. His overeating became the butt of many jokes, but this revelation provided a tragic reasoning for Homer's reliance on food, which is a constant throughout the show and his life.
"'Tis no man, 'tis a remorseless eating machine."
And even though she did become more active in political protest, Mona did make sure she didn't neglect her son completely. When an angry Abe scolded Homer for accidentally breaking his model airplanes, Homer found solace in baking pies with his mum. The family did attempt some kind of normality in going on the occasional vacation, but a particular fishing trip would come back to haunt Homer later on as an adult. But we'll talk more about this later on in the video. Mona's activism peaked when she joined a student group protesting against Mr. Burns' germ warfare lab. One fateful night, the activists broke into the lab, destroyed his beloved but diabolical germs, and inadvertently cured security guard Clancy Wiggum of his asthma.
Acne remains, but asthma disappearing.
No one was seriously hurt in the lab, but Mona's kind nature proved to be her undoing. Stopping to help her trample Mr. Burns, he repaid her kindness by making her a wanted fugitive. Therefore, she was forced to say goodbye to Homer as he slept and left her old life behind to embark on a brand new adventure on the run. And to think this all started with sideburns. No wonder Mr. Burns hates them.
Mattingly, get rid of those sideburns.
What sideburns?
You heard me, hippie.
Her family reunion. Up until this point, he believed his mother to be dead due to Abe telling him so at the movies, allegedly to spare him from the reality of her criminal past. So he was understandably upset to find her supposed grave actually belonged to Walt Whitman.
I hate you, Walt freaking Whitman!
So following a tumble into his own grave, Homer found himself face to face with Mona, and they shared a heartwarming reunion that even Homer couldn't ruin.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, darling.
Mother Simpson marked as Mona's proper debut on the show, memorably voiced by Oscar nominee Glenn Close. Homer was hugely proud to introduce her to his family, returning to a state of childlike innocence, eager to impress and seek her approval.
Look at what I can do!
I see you, Homer. That's very nice.
But the rest of the family, they were a bit more suspicious of her, with Bart having discovered several IDs in her purse. Homer followed suit and realised he'd yet to receive an answer for why she abandoned him.
Then why did she leave me?
Let's find out.
The family confronted Mona, who finally admitted the truth, explaining how she survived over the years through her hippie contacts. She marketed health shakes, proofread cookbooks, and ran credit checks at a Porsche dealership, and so Grandma Simpson was finally embraced by the family fully. Even Abe managed to forgive her, sort of, in the most pathetic way possible.
Can we have sex, please?
Oh, Abe.
But despite living on the lam, Mona did keep up to date on some of Homer's activities, hugely proud of his stint as an astronaut. But his job at the nuclear power plant, not so much.
Do you still work for NASA?
No, I work at the nuclear power plant.
Oh, Homer.
Mona's return quickly incurred the wrath of Mr. Burns, who alerted the FBI to track her down. But thankfully, due to a not-so-anonymous tip from Wiggum, Grandpa did manage to stall the FBI while Homer and Mona escaped. And so, picked up by an underground ally of Mona on the side of the road in the desert, Mona walked out of Homer's life once more. And so, in one of the most emotional moments in Simpsons history, a lonely Homer sat gazing up at the stars. Her arrest. Since the FBI were reading The Simpsons mail, Mona left a secret message in a newspaper article about a giant pizza, which was the first food Homer had ever choked on.
You sure know me, Mom.
But despite going to all that trouble, she was quickly spotted by the police, and poor Homer wasn't much of a getaway driver. Ken Brockman's news broadcast did manage to fill in a whole lot of gaps for us in terms of Mona's recent history, most specifically her recent jobs. She was a crossing guard, oral historian, reader for the blind, listener for the deaf, and reacher for the short. And so after finally being caught after all these years, she was brought in for her first ever court appearance. Now luckily the jury couldn't resist reuniting a mother with her son, and Mona was acquitted of all her charges. Now finally given the second chance they wanted, Homer and Mona wasted no time catching up on all of the events she missed. But recreating Bart's birth may have been a step too far.
Wah, ain't I cute? You owe me a dirt bike.
Even Mr. Burns seemed to let bygones be bygones, renaming his germ lab after Mona in her honour. But sadly, it was all too good to be true, with him staging an elaborate ruse to get her to admit signing a national park register with a fake name, and seeing as this was a federal offence, she was apprehended by the FBI. But this time, Homer was determined not to be separated again, so he hijacked the prison transfer bus. But Mona wouldn't let him make the same mistake she did, so kicked him out the bus and saved him from a life of regret. Now sadly, this episode ended with the bus diving from a cliff, but Mona's body was never found. The family held a funeral for her, but Homer couldn't accept that she was gone. Therefore, he scoured news articles looking for clues pointing to her survival. And he was right, Mona did really leave an unseen message explaining her escape in elaborate detail. And like mother like son, she's not the only Simpson who knows how to fake their death.
That dummy worked like a charm, Dad.
Best $600 I ever spent.
Her real death. It's in the episode Mona Leaves Her where it's apparent how Homer's feelings for his mum has really digressed. At first, it was almost as if he wanted to relive his youth in order to show her how much of a good child he was. The second was him coming to terms with the things she had missed and decided to integrate her more within his family. But finally, by this point, Homer just plain refused to forgive her, fearful of getting her once again.
You keep disappearing and reappearing and it's not funny. You're just like that show Scrubs.
But on her last night, Mona admits to her failure in this poignant quote.
When I left you, it was because I thought I could make the world a little bit better. Maybe all I did was make my own world a lot worse.
Now, this speaks volumes for how I personally saw Mona. It was very difficult to dislike her because you knew she was ultimately trying to do the best thing, but unfortunately, her family always came second. On the other hand, she was a deeply unhappy woman bound to the chains of a depressing marriage, so it was only natural that she wanted to break free of it and become her true self. As Homer lay awake in bed, he finally came to terms with the fact that she was still his mother, and he really still wanted a relationship with her. But in a truly harrowing scene, Homer discovers that his mum has passed away, and it was just too late for them to really have their closure. Devastated that he never got to say goodbye, Homer sought comfort from his friends and family, but nothing could heal his pain. But soon enough, Marge finds a recording of Grandma Simpson's will where she tasked Homer with an important mission. Climb to the highest peak of Springfield Monument Park and scatter her ashes at precisely 3 p.m. Homer carried out her wish, and in true Mona fashion, her ashes disrupted a missile guidance system in a secret facility inside of the mountain. He was disappointed to learn that her loving request to him was just a disguise for one last hippie protest, until he discovered the rocket's true purpose. In one of Mr. Burns' most evil schemes, he planned to dispose Springfield's nuclear waste by firing it into the Amazon rainforest. Finally realizing the seriousness of what his mother had been fighting for all along, Homer destroyed the facility with a little help from his family. For once, Homer actually saved the day, displaying James Bond-like heroics to complete the mission and give Mona a fitting send-off, and one she would certainly be proud of. Her legacy and retcons. Mona may have passed on, but her memory continues to play a pivotal role in Homer's life. When he mysteriously began wetting the bed, Professor Frink's invention enabled the family to enter his dreams and uncover the cause of his psychological trauma. An image of Death, who was then revealed to be Mona, provided an answer by showing childhood memories of a family fishing trip. Homer and Abe capsized and they returned several hours late with no fish. And only a few weeks later, Mona abandoned them. And so Homer had convinced himself that he had contributed to his parents' split. As it turns out, when Mona saw how sweet and caring Abe was to Homer, she knew he was in good hands when it came time for her to leave. Mona's legacy would return again to drastically affect Homer and Abe's relationship in the episode Forgive and Regret. Afraid he was on his deathbed, Abe made the horrible confession dating back to Homer's fond childhood memories of baking pies with Mona. On the back of each recipe for the pie, she would write a sweet note to Homer, but furious at Mona for leaving, Abe threw them completely off a cliff. So now Abe sets out on the mission to make amends by recovering the recipes. But when Abe nearly falls to his death, this makes Homer realize that his father was far more important than decades-old notes. And as it would turn out, they would find the recipes later on in a nearby diner, where Mona's pies had saved the owner's business. It's undeniable that Homer will forever miss his mum, but his friends and family would be there to try and numb the pain, especially Moe and his never-ending supply of Duff. One such occasion landed Homer in hospital, where he briefly reunited with Mona in heaven.
Come here, you.
Oh my God, this is all I ever wanted.
As time goes by, especially on Mother's Day, Homer can't help but feel his childhood memories of Mona were fading.
And it's starting to get a little fuzzier each year.
And so, in the hugely controversial episode Mothers and Other Strangers, it actually retcons Simpsons canon. In the episode, Homer revealed they uncovered the truth about Mona's disappearance when he was 16 after she sent him a postcard from Utah. And so he confronted his father, and Abe realized that he'd only been protecting himself.
Oh my God, I wasn't protecting you. I was protecting me from the shame of a wife who left.
And so Abe's revelation about his own flaws encouraged him to quit drinking, and they embarked on a road trip to Utah. Homer and Abe finally began to bond, and their newfound closeness resulted in Homer having to make a heart-wrenching decision. They found Mona working at a remote gas station, but their almost reunion was thwarted by the FBI, who had followed them from Springfield. Homer chased Mona through the canyon, but when Abe got stuck on some rocks, he chose to stay behind with his father, the same parent who had stayed behind to look after him. Homer moved on with his life, not seeing Mona again until the day Bart was born, breaking canon a second time. So it brings the question, was this episode worth forever changing a beloved storyline? Now to me, I don't think so, and it might have worked better had Homer never physically seen Mona, leaving her survival unclear to us and unclear to Homer too. If it did anything, it did provide another layer to soften Abe and Homer's relationship into a sweeter father-son story, as well as proving how much Marge changed Homer's life for the better, and ultimately curing his fear of abandonment. But do let me know in the comments what you think, and let's have a discussion about it. Many thanks again to CyberGhost VPN for sponsoring this video. If you want full access to blocked online content, then check out the link in the description. But for now, that's the complete timeline of Mona Simpson. Thank you so much for watching, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.